Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston says he doesn't understand why he and two of his cabinet ministers wouldn't be allowed on a First Nation.
We're talking separation. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Saskatchewan now, the ones organizing talks about separation. This isn't just Alberta anymore. We got a bunch of stories here. Let's jump into this. We got Carney getting slammed on all fronts. We've got Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe is renewing his attack on Ottawa's equalization formula, saying Western half provinces like his, Alberta and BC, get nothing in 2026, while Quebec alone receives $13.9 billion. The freeloading must end. I understand equalization for smaller provinces that really need money, but Quebec doesn't need it. If they want to develop their natural resources, they should. Then they can get rich off of that. If they don't want to, then they shouldn't receive Alberta's dirty oil money or Saskatchewan's dirty uranium or potash or whatever money. The system is clearly broken. With that said, the people of Saskatchewan are now thinking about separating. They've got their own independence movement here, holding meetings across the province. So there's the speaker here, which we'll see in a second here. He's holding events here with 200 people per group, going all across Saskatchewan, Meadow Lake, Assiniboine, Tompkins, Prince Albert, Raymore, Leader, Swift Current, etc. This is a real thing now. There's a movement of separation coming out of Saskatchewan.
In a hall near Saskatoon, over 200 people have come to hear from the Saskatchewan Prosperity Project, a group promoting Saskatchewan's independence from Canada. The group's president, Brad Williams, focuses on Western alienation and what he says are the economic and political benefits of separation.
Freedom, hope, prosperity for our children, for their futures, because right now in Canada it's a sinking ship, and if we don't take our little lifeboat and throw it out and get off while we can, we're going down with the ship. And we don't have to. We are giving away so much money to Ottawa. We're so controlled. We're losing our freedoms.
The Saskatchewan Prosperity Project is following in the footsteps of the Alberta Prosperity Project. Over the last 5 weeks, Williams has held public education sessions in close to 10 communities around the province, including Swift Current, Prince Albert, and Meadow Lake. Key talking points include equalization payments, canola tariffs, and immigration. People we spoke to at this meeting say they want some kind of change.
Recently, through COVID and through a lot of mistrust that I have in the current government, I'm interested in looking at ways that we can become more resourceful, more independent.
I was really happy to see the big crowd out tonight. It was excellent to see a lot of enthusiasm. I talked to a lot of people after as they were leaving, and they're ready to get involved. They're ready to get into their community. They're ready to start forming chapters in their small towns.
Western alienation has a long history on the prairies, but political analysts say there's never been an organized separatism movement with any real momentum.
No province can leave
this political scientist says provinces aren't allowed to separate from Canada without a constitutional amendment, and plebiscites in Saskatchewan aren't legally binding.
There's no mechanism in Canada for a province to just unilaterally say they're out of the country. And that's a Supreme Court decision that happened after the 1995 referendum, when we were thinking about this in the context of Quebec.
The Prosperity Project is encouraging people to start local chapters and plans to hold meetings in more Saskatchewan towns and cities in the months to come. Lisa Rism, CBC News, Saskatoon.
So this is a real movement now. And you notice at the beginning there, he said they're taking away our freedoms. I mean, this is happening every day. Remember this story here? DND proposes mobilizing citizen army of 300,000. This was up from like 26,000. It's more than 10 times. What do you think this is for? Carney wants to keep us nice and safe? I don't think so. I think this is for two reasons. One, Carney is already going to profit off of the conflict over in Ukraine. Carney's not the only one that's going to profit here too. I bet a bunch of those European leaders, that's why they don't want that conflict to end. Right now, there's this back and forth whether it's going to end, whether it's not. Europe was basically getting ready to go in there and drag all the countries in there to go into this conflict. So a bigger army would allow Carney to essentially push Canada into this, and thus there'd be more money to be made by the companies that rebuild Ukraine or provide military equipment. But also, remember the Freedom Convoy? Mark Carney himself here was one of the ones recommending that bank accounts be seized and shut down. He thought Canadians should be controlled. Is it far-fetched to think that this guy wants a big military, even if it's reserves, so he can control the population of Canada? Because they know full well that if a bunch of Canadians just mobilize, there's nothing they can do. There's not enough police and there's not enough military to handle Canada. I mean, the Freedom Convoy was a couple thousand people there. What if 10 or 20,000 people showed up? They couldn't do anything. They would be outmatched. There's no way to control that. That seems quite likely why he wants to mobilize. He wants to have 300,000 reservists, because then he would literally have an army to push back against angry Canadians. And as he keeps stripping Canada's freedoms away, he would need a bigger army to control the angry population. So with that, going back to Saskatchewan here, they're putting forward this idea of separation. And obviously they would probably join with Alberta on this. We can see this quote here: "I'd like to see First Nations Nations people have a lot more say in what happens in the resource development on their land, he said. For example, they could be the corporation that actually extracts it instead of having to farm it out to some other company from somewhere else in the world. So right away, this Williams guy here trying to set it up to work with First Nations so there's no more pushback, at least not from within. It'd only be from Ottawa. Just think of what happens in British Columbia if you had a guy like Aaron Gunn or someone else, a strong leader, come in for the BC Conservatives and win. Then you could potentially have 3 provinces saying, you know what, let's team up together and create our own country and get out of this madness, this nonsense that is Canada. Because right now, one BC has just completely imploded. I'm going to wait to do a video on that because it just keeps changing minute by minute. But Dallas Brody was thrown out of the party and all sorts of infighting and all sorts of stuff going on there. So we'll wait on that. But it seems one BC has imploded completely. But a good, strong conservative leader in British Columbia could revive this province, put the 3 together. Mark Carney's going to be in trouble. So the only way to control that is with a big army. Speaking of frustrated constituents, here we got a shot inside of Michael Maw's office.
Michael Maw, I'm absolutely right. 辭職啊！即刻係嘛？立即下台啊！立即下台，好，請交代。
Michael Ma is a CCP puppet. That's what it looks like to me. And people are starting to wake up in other countries. In this case, it's in Chile. Here's their recent election. The pro-Trump candidate here just won 59.8% versus 40.2%. And what did that look like? Well, this is it here. Thousands of Chileans took to the streets here to celebrate. Important to watch Chile because likely there'll be some sort of relationship with Donald Trump. You could see more trade there. How does that affect Canada? The joy rips right off the screen. I mean, people are happy. Just imagine if we got a conservative government in Canada here, Pierre Poilievre, taking us out of the dark ages. We've got a lot of updates here on First Nation land claims. So we've got this one, David Eby, saying that he's going to use taxpayer money financially back properties in the Cowichan claimed area.
In a year-end interview with CBC News, Premier David Eby says the province is trying to ease the stress for homeowners and businesses in the area of Richmond impacted by the Cowichan land claim through a plan to offer loan and mortgage guarantees through the Ministry of Finance.
One of the things that we're working on right now is a guarantee for the Richmond property owners that are in the specific area that the court awarded and declared that the titles were invalid so that they're able to access borrowing, refinance their mortgages or mortgage a property if someone's buying new or access financing as a business. That guarantee will enable them to continue life a little more close to normal.
So does that mean?
Let me get this straight. This guy's going to bankrupt taxpayers in British Columbia because he doesn't have the kahunas to step forward and get rid of that stupid UNDRIP laws that they voted in a couple years ago. Seriously, what is this? Taxpayers should not be paying for this junk.
That the BC government would almost be the backstop for their mortgages?
That's right. That we would support a financial institution that had anxiety about otherwise writing a mortgage to be able to have the confidence to write that mortgage for somebody.
More than one.
I said this before and I say it again. If Canadian taxpayers have to bail out every single property, Canada will go broke. Just looking at Kamloops, I believe there's 2 bands trying to claim the entire city, which is worth $43 billion. We don't have that money. So what's going to happen? You can't just pay these people out. They're just going to take it, or are they going to start taking property taxes? Or are they going to kick people off their land? Or are they going to, what is it? Just going to turn into a big battle? Like, what's going to happen here? We know businesses aren't sticking around for this nonsense because they don't have anything to do with this. It's not stable. Without fee simple title, our democracy is not stable, at least in British Columbia, and this is going to fester, and it's already moving across the country. We saw it with Chief White Duck trying to steal $15 billion of land out in the east there.
150 private properties, including homes and industrial sites, are impacted by the BC Supreme Court decision that awarded the Cowichan Nation Aboriginal title to more than 300 hectares of land in South Richmond. The decision has led to confusion and uncertainty over what it means for the validity of private property ownership. Eby says his team has been going door to door in the area, asking homeowners if they've been unable to secure mortgage renewals or property loans because of the court decision. While there are no concrete examples of that yet, many express fears they...
Yes, there are. I've already reported 3 of them. Well, who are these people? Go do some work. First off, there's that guy at that event who said he couldn't get a mortgage. There's that big $140 million development that fell through. They already had financing. It fell through after that. There's that big warehouse company, $500-something million deal that just fell through. And what are we going to back all of these? $1 billion here, $1 billion there. We're going to go broke. David Eby needs to have some courage and repeal DRIPA immediately. This is such a weak response for him saying we're going to back all these properties. If you need a mortgage, don't worry, we'll back it. Taxpayers will pay for everything. This is ridiculous.
Many express fears they won't be able to sell their home in the future.
That's just it. The property values of these houses have dropped. $1 million here, $1 million there. I mean, a lot of these properties are worth $5, $6, $7 million because they're huge farms, and each acre of land out here is worth millions. But who wants to touch this? I mean, some people, maybe if it's a $7 million property, maybe they buy it at $1 million, $2 million maybe. But a lot of people are not going to pay anything more than at least a 50% haircut on the price. Is the BC government going to fork up taxpayer money and say, here, we'll pay the other half that you lost because of the Cowichan ruling? This is ridiculous. It's just another failed decision by David Eby. This weak leadership. Now, related on the same topic, we got this one from New Brunswick. Appeals Court rules Indigenous group can't seek Aboriginal title over private land. So there's some common sense over in New Brunswick here. And it says here that a judicial declaration of Aboriginal title would confer those ownership rights, and I'm unable to see how those rights can coexist with the very same rights vested in fee simple owners. In my view, remedial justice favors compensation from the Crown over to disposition of private fee simple owners in all cases. So basically, there's some common sense pushing back, saying that both Aboriginal title and fee simple title cannot exist at the same time here. So hopefully judges across the country here, whether it's pushing back against Chief White Duck out near Ottawa or in BC, can use this ruling to push back against these and have some common sense and say, you know what, no more. Get rid of DRIPA and stop having Canadians' land being stolen. As stated earlier here, I mean, this whole thing with Cowichan is a complete mess, and we have entire city of Kamloops assessed value at least $43 billion. There's not enough money to pay for this. And if you add in all of British Columbia, well, it's just not going to happen. Do Canadians just have to move on and give up everything they've ever worked for? Like, that's not going to happen. People will lose their absolute minds, and it'll turn into something much worse here. And there's not enough money to pay this out. So what we need is strong leadership from the BC Premier right now and repeal DRIPA. With that said, we've got Nova Scotia Premier response to ban on Indigenous land. That's right. Tim Houston got banned from First Nation land.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston says he doesn't understand why he and two of his cabinet ministers wouldn't be allowed on a First Nation. One chief and council told them they're not welcome after a crackdown on what the province calls illegal cannabis sales. CTV's Jesse Thomas reports.
Premier Tim Houston is reinforcing his government's crackdown on what they call the illegal or shadow cannabis market, saying the surge of illegal cannabis dispensaries popping up is getting out of control, and calls it a major public safety and health risk.
We're focused on Nova Scotians, protecting Nova Scotians, upholding the law, making sure that it's like kind of one set of laws for every Nova Scotian.
But the crackdown has sparked controversy. One Mi'kmaq community has banned Houston and two high-ranking cabinet ministers from entering their land. Houston said he's puzzled by the move.
To have somebody banned from a community with an or else statement is kind of bizarre for me in Canada. But I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on keeping Nova Scotia.
This is such a clown show, so I don't know much about this story, but one would suspect if they're banning that and they don't like it, that maybe they have some of that activity going on their band there. I don't know, but it's just funny that we've got premiers being banned from First Nation reserves now. Moving ahead, we've got quite the scene here on CBC. Believe it or not, they finally told the truth on here.
I guess I wanted to examine whether the Prime Minister, whether the government, Althea, understands that it's a minority government, and whether we see any signs that they are trying to find collaboration either at committees or in the House or in any way to get their legislation through.
I don't know that the government believes in collaboration, and maybe I'm too generous by saying government, the Prime Minister. Steve McKinnon may get along well with Andrew Scheer, this is the Liberal government's House leader, but he does not get along with the Bloc Québécois, which is the only other dance partner in committees. So that, to me, was always a questionable appointment. They decided not to give the NDP official party status, which means that they only have two partners to dance with, one of whom is trying to be obstructionist most of the time, the Conservatives, in committee. And so they only have the Bloc to dance with. And they're not doing a good job. You know, when Justin Trudeau resigned in January, he talked about Parliament being paralyzed.
And it was,
That fall, the Liberals had passed 12 bills. Mark Carney has passed this fall, as we're recording this, one bill. One bill. That Building Canada Act that he was talking about in the clip, that was passed in June. So, you know, they have a really hard time passing their bills, some of which, frankly, their own members think is a good thing because they don't like the bills. But They have a problem.
This is funny. You see Rosemary's face during the entire time. She looks very worried. You watch the full thing here. She keeps clapping back and keeps trying to prop up Carney. I'm surprised, though. I mean, Althea here essentially saying the quiet part out loud. She's dropping some truth bombs. And we also have Andrew Coyne, surprisingly, doing the same here.
They have a problem making allies and realizing that if they want to get stuff done through Parliament, they need to work with other people.
Okay, and we should say,
Yeah, they don't care about working with other parties because all Mark Carney wants to do is steal a majority. He's got his people helping him, Xi Jinping helping him campaign for the election. Is Xi Jinping helping him now get a majority? It's very undemocratic. If he gets a majority by just swaying people over promising things, then there's going to be some serious revolt in this country. So jumping ahead, we've got this buffoon, Andrew Coyne, dropping some truth bombs himself.
There's an authoritarian streak more broadly running through this government, as there was through the government before it, as there was through the government before that, and before that. It's a common theme, liberal or conservative, is abusing Parliament, running roughshod over individual rights. In this case, we've got a government that has been passing omnibus bill after omnibus bill, depriving refugees of the right to an independent hearing, opening the way to warrantless access to subscriber information. So this is of a piece with that. And the long and the short of it is more power for the powers that be and less power for the average citizen.
It's also important to note, allowing refugees to come into Canada and just be unvetted. And there's no tracking them down. Come into the country and run away. They could be criminals. We don't know.
I don't know if you know this, but what is the understanding of why the government feels they need this? Like, is there some justification for it that would be worth considering?
It's a little bit more limited than I think how Andrew's framing it. But first of all, okay. So I think it's important to say this was not in the copy of the budget that we were given in the lockup.
In the print one, yeah.
It's buried in Annex 5, which is not included in the print copy of the budget.
Oh, not in the print copy, okay.
And it doesn't actually say, it just says that they're amending the Red Tape Reduction Act. So when you look at what's actually in the bill, what they seem to be trying to do is to exempt a company, a person, an unregistered company, an entity, as Andrew called it, that from laws that are in place to allow for the testing of a product or a service or a regulation, which is a law.
Red tape. They want to get rid of the red tape. Is that the idea?
Well,
they want to get rid of the red tape. Is that the idea? She's desperately trying to cover for Carney here. I'm amazed they're actually calling it as it is. This was a draconian attempt to sneak in this provision to allow Carney's ministers to just work with companies and not have to disclose anything. They can bypass environmental laws, bypass everything, bypass conflicts of interest.
Well, so to allow for something that would make the economy, and this is in the law, help the economy or innovation or like these are very broad parameters.
Sure.
And when I asked the governments, I went back and forth with them for a week to find out like what is it that you're. This seems a little weird. Why do you need this? And like how what can you give me an example of how it would be used? And they basically told me that it's to sandbox. So if there's a test, like for example, with drones, there was a law in the book that said that the pilot has to be in the plane. So they had to create like a separate regulation so that they could test drones.
Okay.
So they already had the toolkit and to be able to do this. So why do they need these wider, grander, more elaborate powers?
Right.
I never got a response from the department. I never got a response from the ministry.
Yeah.
And the answers that have been given in the House of Commons when other MPs have since raised it do not address the issue. So we don't know. And I think that's why Andrew and I are really worried about the slippery slope.
Quickly, and then maybe Chantal is less worried. I don't know.
Maybe Chantal's less worried. Rosemary trying to do cleanup here because she doesn't like what she hears. This is some seriously sinister stuff that Carney's trying to slip in there. They want to be able to bypass Mark Carney's conflicts of interest. That's what those are really brought in for.
The intent may or may not be about spurring innovation, et cetera, but the language of the bill is any minister, any law for which that minister is responsible, they can exempt it. It's not about, the language of the bill doesn't say just for the purposes of sandboxing and experimentation, et cetera.
Well, it does say for innovation and whatnot.
Okay,
it isn't.
Chantal's take.
Yes,
Is it something that we...
Is it something, how do we clean this one up? I wonder if Andrew Coyne and Althea here are going to get invited back on the CBC. So this is being posted on CBC The National. I don't know how many people watch this. At least this information is getting passed on to the clueless liberals who watch this stuff day in, day out.